How's it going, everyone? I'm really excited for our guest today. He's coming from a project that is building decentralized derivative infrastructure on Solana. So they are a previous hackathon winner and continue to strive for innovation in the ecosystem. So much is going on here under the hood, but luckily we have Tristan, a core contributor at Zeta, joining us today.
Hey, Greg. Great to be
Uh,
here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, amazing to have you on here, Tristan. And really just excited for how much Zeta has put out and how far you guys have come from the mainnet launch in January. So, really, just to start things out, do you want to outline what Zeta is and the goals you guys have behind your protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. So Zeta is this kind of big, ambitious project. We think derivatives are this massive sector that is yet kind of untapped in DeFi. And obviously building on the Solana blockchain, which we think opens up so much potential for building really high-paced, complex trading infrastructure. And so we built this out to kind of capture that market and really further the state of derivatives. Right now, we offer futures trading and options trading as kind of an extension, I guess you can think of the Serum DEX. So we do all this complicated stuff under the hood, like margin management, under collateralization, really fast kind of mark pricing updates and kind of risk management, as well as like a really nice, sleek UX and kind of user interface that people can trade with. Because we think, options and futures can be a little bit daunting, I guess, to kind of new users. So we want to really onboard people there and get them trading some of the most sophisticated and kind of most popular products that you see in traditional markets.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially with some of the rails like Zeta Flex you guys provide for structured products, DOVs, and we'll definitely get into that. Just to lay a little more context, can you touch on the beginnings of Zeta and really a little bit of background behind the team, how you guys came all together when you started building?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think most of us in the team were kind of interested in crypto for a number of years. A lot of us, I think, got our hands dirty in 2016, 2017 with that kind of last bull run. I think all taking a pretty big interest in crypto generally. And then I think it took a couple of years for us to kind of go and kind of understand it a little bit better with what was going on. I kind of finished some of my studies and was kind of learning a bunch of computer science and distributed systems. So I was pretty interested in proof of work blockchains and actually kind of starting to do the engineering side and not just kind of buying shit coins on Binance and FTX. It was going and actually building stuff and learning about smart contracts. So yeah, kind of a year ago, I guess we all came together and we were like, hey, DeFi is this amazing use case for crypto. So bringing together people from my background, I guess, of more tech and software engineering, and then a bunch of other guys on the team are all from finance, trading, high frequency kind of background. And so we brought together this crack team, I would say, of just pretty smart people who are pretty hardworking. We just decided to build out a proof of concept, I guess, for one of the early kind of Solana hackathons. I think it was the Solana season hackathon in, was it April of last year? So we've been going for almost a year. We basically all quit our jobs, went full time on that hackathon, just put in crazy hours and built out this really simple options platform MVP, and kind of launched that to DevNet. It was really well received. People loved it. I think it was really fun to trade. We ran a mini trading competition, got some kind of key opinion leaders on there as well. And it was awesome. We managed to win that hackathon out of 13,000 participants. It gave us a really good wind at our backs, I think, to get going. And over the last over 6 months, I guess, we've been building out the core platforms that kind of re-engineered from scratch with our learnings from the hackathon. Have built out a 10x more sophisticated DEX than what we had before. And now it's really kind of taking a life of its own.
Yeah, that's amazing, Tristan. And I really like seeing the innovation come into the space. How you mentioned you guys had a super team and everyone was just really excited, dropped everything and was like, this innovation is amazing. And you guys all in it. So I think that's great to see. And I think it's awesome to put where Zeta stands in DeFi in better perspective. So I was lurking a little bit on Twitter, saw one of the slides from the Singapore Hacker House And I was just wondering if you could outline the current DeFi Legos that are on Solana, sort of what this all means and where Zeta lies inside of this.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think we're kind of recreating a lot of the components of, traditional finance that we've seen come up over, decades essentially. And it's pretty much being re-engineered and actually like furthered, I guess, in the space of like 2 years now. So even in Solana, I think a year ago when we started, there was practically nothing but Serum and Bonfida. Then you start getting these like swap primitives like Radium coming on. Now you've got like other amazing ones like Orca. We've seen a bunch of kind of borrowing and lending protocols coming to light, which is really great. Then you're getting kind of more into the leverage and derivatives side of things. So that's where I think Mango was really the first mover there. A bunch of other ones like Synthetify doing synthetic assets, which is quite cool. And then I think options and just like broader derivatives are like the last frontier, I would say, for like a pretty complete financial ecosystem. And so that's kind of where we come into the mix, I would say, is trying to build this this derivatives layer. So we kind of launched vanilla options initially. We also went and launched dated futures. So we're the first ones to do that. So that's kind of our product set at the moment. Still looking to add more under that kind of hood. So stuff like perps, I think, is a pretty natural fit. Everlasting options, if they're kind of possible, we would definitely look to kind of go into them. And then you start getting into more funky stuff that hasn't really been done before. So stuff like kudos to 01 taking that kind of squeeze idea from Open on Ethereum and building out these kind of power perpetuals. That's quite interesting. And then on top of the options vertical, we're now having like I see us as this kind of a base layer or like kind of protocol layer, like you would see in the internet. People building out TCP and HTTP and all these protocols, and then we just use these options primitives to build more complex applications. So this kind of application layer above it. And so you're seeing stuff like vaults starting to pop up, which are kind of, aggregated liquidity for options, these kind of big blocky trades where everyone deposits into a vault and you're doing tens of millions of kind of volume there. And then you're seeing other things like exotic options and other kind of exotic derivatives popping up. So there are a few protocols in that kind of space doing funky stuff like knock-in, knock-out options, which are, I think, definitely on like the more complicated end of what you see in traditional finance. So yeah, it's really starting to blossom, I think, and you're seeing all these apps starting to get built. They don't have to go ahead and reinvent the wheel with options and how that's kind of how you mint those, how you settle them, how you trade them. We've kind of done a lot of the hard work there. And so now people have got the tools where, we've given them the code and you can spin up a vault. I do this presentation a bunch, but you can spin up a vault on us in like 10 minutes, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's just crazy how quickly this infrastructure was able to be put up, in the sense that in the past year, maybe 2 years, people are able to create an infrastructure that is rivaling TradeFi now. And there's a couple different ways we can go here. I think the best thing would just be, how has it been working with other projects in the ecosystem? This seems massive currently in the Web3 and crypto landscape, being able to leverage other people's protocols like you're talking about. I also know you guys have a ton of partnerships, so this could be a time to touch on all the infrastructure you guys are providing.
Yeah, great question. So I think DeFi and like one of the biggest value adds is composability. And I think, when you look at traditional finance, a lot of it is inherently like non-composable. You have all these different, proprietary trading companies that are competing for nanosecond latency, against one another. It's all about kind of guarded secrets and walled gardens where people don't actually want to work together. And so it's like at every trading firm, someone's building like a volatility model or an options pricing model or their own kind of execution layer and that kind of stuff. Whereas the nice thing in DeFi is all these different primitives are kind of inherently composable. It's like taking the best parts of, I guess, open source software or just generally software development and just kind of getting all these things natively integrated. And so, we pivoted our strategy quite a lot, where I think we were building just about everything in-house, like most of last year up until Breakpoint. I think it was just like, we're pretty like confident in what we're building. I think we're like a smart group of guys. We can build out this awesome infrastructure. But then you kind of look at the landscape and it's like, hey, if you want to build something really ambitious, really awesome, you kind of have to scale a bit better than like the immediate, core people kind of developing a lot of the software. And so it's all about, I guess, getting external contributors on through these kind of like bounty programs, so people building us clients and like, analytics and, market making bots, stuff like that. That's something that, the community is really good at, and we've got good engagement in the Discord. And then the second bit is, like you mentioned, working with protocols themselves. So we see a lot of partnerships happen in crypto. I think some of them are like maybe not super material and they're just like a bit surface level, but we try and work pretty deeply with some of the projects that we partner with. So two really big ones that we've done recently are on the Vault side. We launched this Zeta Flex, which is kind of like a flexible options protocol. You can kind of customize the hell out of everything. It's quite nice and lends itself to composability, where it's like, if you want an option of, this strike and this expiry and whatever parameters, like, yeah, it's permissionless. You just go out there and create it. Like, that's like public infrastructure for you. And so that was great. We onboarded Ribbon Finance onto Solana. So that was, I would say, probably the first and probably biggest Ethereum to Solana kind of migration. So they're a pretty big protocol on Ethereum, doing like several hundred mil TVL in terms of this Vault stuff. They came over. We built the smart contract infrastructure for them with Zeta Flex, and they basically could launch their Vault on top of us. We worked really closely with them on the engineering side to get that launched, to get them an SDK and like help them integrate. And so we've been like making a strong push to, I think, put out a lot of developer tooling. So we have like a TypeScript SDK, which is really good for front ends and any kind of programmatic trading. And then we also have this other library called Fuse, which is our like Rust client, which any other kind of on-chain programs can use. So we've got all these CPI examples. People just kind of fork that. You kind of build your own protocol, and it's like pretty simplistic, I think, to go and route any kind of orders and buy and sell options through our platform by that. And so, yeah, like to that point, like Ribbon's on, we've got Katana on. There are a bunch of other ones integrating, like Exotic is another one that's integrating, doing exotic options. So yeah, it's really starting to grow pretty exponentially.
I think it's amazing how you guys have realized this gap in certain tooling, and you're like, look, we can jump on this, and tons of protocols are now leveraging this. And I think that just wraps around as a testament to the whole question of how the ecosystem is just pushing innovation together, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, sometimes like the tooling, the criticism is like there's not enough tooling or not enough documentation, like in Solana or with certain projects. So we tried to take the opposite approach of like handhold people as much as possible, because we know a lot of these teams have like one, or if they're lucky, two developers. And, if they're not working on their kind of core product, it's really hard for them to find time to integrate. So, I had to chew glass for a bit and spend my Christmas just writing up a bunch of docs and examples to make other people's life a little bit easier, but it paid off in the end.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like Tristan was playing a little bit of Santa this holiday season. But to move forward a little bit here, is composability Zeta, is that just playing into the meme here, or is that something where you guys are actually just really looking to rebrand, or just emphasizing how important this idea of composability? Sorry, I have my headphones in so I can hear myself talking. It gets a little hard to not trip over your words sometimes.
No worries. Totally understand. Yeah, it's a bit of both, I guess. It was kind of started off as just a little bit of a fun meme at the start of last week. You saw like Anatoly and a bunch of others change their name to like composability Toly. And, there was a quote from Armani. It's like, why is everyone changing their name to this? And I was like doing the same. And then, basically we just changed the name for our kind of Twitter handle for Zeta. And I think it does go with like what we've changed our focus to, which is rather than trying to build like the entire vertical, like, top to bottom, it's like, we're going to be this awesome infrastructure layer and, kind of do what Serum does. And they have this like core protocol that I think services like 50 plus other protocols that are all using their order book infrastructure. So yeah, I think like big focus for us is composability, and we definitely live and breathe that. So any other projects that are out there in the ecosystem and that want to integrate, like that's, huge opportunity. We've got the developer docs, we're pretty friendly guys, so we're always happy to chat. And now we're getting super involved in like hackathons, like sponsoring Riptide. We just did this big Solana Singapore hacker house as well. So lots of opportunities to get stuck in.
Yeah. And just to jump in there on the hacker houses, I'm actually here in Salt Lake City at Mountain DAO, and there's obviously been the world tour going on. I'm curious if you could just throw some of your perspective out here, what it's been like going to these events, seeing the builders in person, and what it just means for the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah, good question. I think it definitely does humanize it quite a lot. I think we built kind of, I wouldn't say in isolation, but it was, we used to be based all the way in sunny Australia, so it's kind of on the on the other side of the world from where everything's happening in kind of US and certain other geographies. So it did feel quite isolated, and you've been kind of working and talking to these people over Telegram for like 6 months or something or other. And then going to Breakpoint, I think was pretty cool that it like just crystallized these relationships. You go and finally like hang out and get a coffee with people that you've been talking and working with for so long. Like we actually got to meet our whole team, which is awesome because we're kind of a big team now spread across the globe. So that was really cool. Met a ton of projects and made like lots of good connections there. And I guess like, pretty long-term friends, hopefully, with a bunch of these guys who are building very exciting stuff. And being there in the kind of hacker house that was run in Portugal, that was super cool. It's just like a bunch of devs in one room, everyone trying to like put their heads down and ship product, which was great. I haven't gone to any other hacker houses since then because we've just been trying to ship mainnet. So I've actually been pretty busy and heads down. Likewise with the rest of the team. One of our team members, Mars, has definitely been going out to some of the hacker houses and helping with integration. So she's been to LA, I think it was Chicago, and now in Dubai, which is pretty cool to get some exposure there. I think we've got actually randomly some of the community guys in our Discord wanted to go and represent us at the Moscow Hacker House, which is super cool. So we just shipped some merch over to them to kind of put in a good word. And then, we were organizing this huge hacker house in Singapore, which just got like a huge amount of attention. And I think a lot of people turning up. We had hundreds of people each day in Marina Bay Sands, which is just like an awesome location. So big shout out to the Solana team for that. And it was just a really great turnout, tons and tons of devs building really exciting projects. We had kind of a all-star roster of like talks and panels there from some of the top, traders, VCs, project founders. So that was really cool. And there was a really good energy. And I think people came, especially on the last day, people came off the back of that, just thinking like, hey, we're really building an awesome ecosystem here. There's a great community vibe going to Solana. I think people are really here to make a positive sum, help one another out. And I'm personally really excited, like given this is where like a couple of us are based. I think Solana hasn't quite penetrated yet into some of this kind of like Asia market. And I think there are a ton of devs and just kind of potential project founders out there who are excited to get dug in. So looking forward to working with the Solana team to kind of grow the footprint there.
Yeah, it's amazing to really just watch the community and ecosystem come together in the sense of adding value as a whole, whether it's the community, the builders, or whoever. And that kind of takes me to my next point here. You guys have a 250K feature bounty, and this relays that whole idea of getting the community involved and also leaning towards decentralization. So it'd be great for you to touch on this, just talk over it, the thoughts on it. It's a super interesting concept that we're seeing more and more in Web3.
Yeah, I think this kind of was just spurred by when we were kind of going to mainnet. There were so many pieces of work to work on and only so many hours in the day. And also the fact that recognizing that we do have quite a lot of awesome people in our Discord community. So we'd definitely encourage people to go sign up and check it out. You can probably find it from our Twitter. But yeah, there's like a really good community in there of obviously like traders, people who are passionate about options, and then also a bunch of kind of newer developers who I think are getting hands-on with Solana development, or some existing Solana developers who are just like want to build, different parts of the stack for us. So it was really good. And, we don't want these people to kind of slave away and build things without any kind of upside, I guess. So, we think Serum have done a great job of this as well. Likewise with Solana when they had a grant program. I think, talking to a bunch of other founders, that's actually how they got started. Was there was a bounty out for something, and then they ended up like taking that on, and now they've got a full protocol with tons of customers. So we're trying to do kind of the same thing. There are like maybe like 10 or so tasks that we think are like pretty important and that we would like to outsource to the community. We've got like a bunch of really great interest from that, like lots and lots of people who like wanted to take those on. So yeah, we've just been like basically trying to give them like pointers on there and getting people to kind of like build their own stuff, kind of, put some PRs into repos and kind of, decentralize, I guess, the building aspect of it. Because if we can involve tens, if not hundreds of builders into our protocol, kind of like Mango has done an incredible job of, I think that's like a huge win for everyone.
Yeah, that's amazing. And brings me to my next point, just in the sense of decentralization. It definitely, for someone who's not technical, is a little bit daunting for something like that. How has it been finding these contributors actually? Is there a decent amount of people that are coming out of the woodwork interested? And how does this fit in decentralization overall? I think there's a certain level here, and it's always fun discussing. It's not like you guys can put out this ultimate vision and people are going to come build it for you. You guys need to be there manning the ship, really. So I'm curious how this plays hand in hand and just your overall thoughts on it after doing it for the past month or so.
Yeah. So I guess there are kind of two questions there. One on decentralization, and probably one of like how we found contributors. Maybe on like the latter one, yeah, we've definitely got a bunch of really awesome people popping up. I think in the very early days, it was a lot of speculators just hoping for the token, but now that we've actually got a legitimate product that a bunch of people trade, you see a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, either from other projects or just generally in the community. So it's been really cool. People have like, been options traders for like 10 or 20 years. You get them kind of popping into the Discord, which feels kind of crazy. We've got guys who are like, have been reading and writing content for like big options kind of blogs and kind of newsletter pieces, which has been really cool. A bunch of them who are like, ex-traders or people who are really, interested in crypto now. So that's been really cool, and like engaging and jumping on occasional calls or just kind of talking to them in Discord, I think is really great. We run these like bi-weekly community calls where we just kind of walk through strategy a bit and try and involve community a bit more and get thoughts and opinions. So I'm glad that people are like really engaged there and give a lot of feedback. That's like helped us build our product so much better. People be like, oh, this flow on your product is really clunky, or it's really hard to deposit this, or like this UI thing is like not super intuitive. And we just pretty much go and fix it the next day, because like the feedback's really great. It's not like a traditional company where you have to set up customer interviews. Like we just kind of like can informally just talk to a bunch of people and get good feedback. So that's really cool. In terms of like general decentralization, always something that we're moving towards, like pretty actively. I think, you bring up a good point, which is like trying to build a derivatives exchange from scratch essentially, and just do that as like a fully decentralized kind of software project is probably pretty hard. And you do need, I think, some people to kind of put in the initial design and kind of like build some of the components out. And now it's kind of like optimizing that, improving things, adding new features, which I think works really well. And so, like decentralization, I guess, is somewhat of a double-edged sword, as you're seeing with like a lot of DAOs. Like it's awesome to involve a lot of people, but then you kind of get this problem of governance where it's like too many chefs in a sense, all trying to contribute to this. You have some like clashing opinions. I think things slow down. So I'm like really impressed. And I talk to Max, occasionally from Mango about how they're running their DAO and how that's all going. They've done an incredible job. I think it's awesome. They have this kind of big community. They have like DAO governance, and that's how like everything kind of goes through. So like that's pretty awesome. I think like it does take up a lot of time. I think you need to be almost full time. And I see Max spending so much of his time on just like generally running the thing and just working on like DAO governance tools and stuff as well. So I don't know if we're like quite in a position yet to be like contributing fully to like DAO infrastructure and tooling, but it's saying that like long term we want to think pretty deeply integrate and kind of hand off and have this as like very much a community run project. But a lot of the tooling and infrastructure are still pretty nascent. I think people are still trying to figure out best practices here. And so we're just kind of leaning into that conversation and trying to figure out what the best ways forward are.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's really interesting to hear from a builder, as it is a double-edged sword looking from both ends. So always love asking that one and just getting some more insight there. To zoom out a little bit, I'm curious if you could put the derivatives market in better perspective, how small it is currently on Solana, but how big of a portion it makes in TradFi.
Yeah, cool. So I have a few stats off the top of my head from some of the talks I did last week. Generally, I think derivatives are massive, both in centralized crypto finance as well as traditional finance. So Yeah, it's like a multi-trillion-dollar industry, like no doubt in traditional finance, and derivatives actually completely eclipse spot volumes, which is pretty crazy because everything you tend to see in DeFi is like fully collateralized spot trading, like you'd see on Serum and any of these kind of like Uniswap type platforms. But then, yeah, kind of looking at how I think futures and perpetuals have taken off in centralized finance over the last couple of years, like that's been super interesting. So perps, I think at their height last year, were doing like $2.4 trillion worth of volume, which is just like mental. Like that's a lot happening. And this has become like the most liquid product on centralized exchanges. So you log into an FTX and Binance and pretty much everyone's trading perps, which, you know, themselves are a derivative. And then, yeah, so in terms of that, yeah, futures and perps we think are already huge. That's already gaining a lot of adoption. We're seeing it now shifting into DeFi. So what was it? DYDX had a very successful, I guess, market maker program, liquidity incentive program last year, and ended up getting their kind of trading volume up higher than like, say, Coinbase and some of these huge exchanges. So that was super bullish, I think, for DeFi derivatives in general with their kind of offerings. And then options are almost the second leg, I guess, of derivatives in traditional finance. They're really, I think, pretty equal in terms of market share with futures trading. So it's been really interesting to see in the option space in DeFi, it's actually a completely different story. Like perps and futures, pretty popular, I guess, in CeFi and DeFi. But then you look at DeFi options and it's really like a tiny bucket. Like we're looking at like less than 1% of overall TVL. And so that's kind of why we started this. We figure it definitely can come up to parity with potentially futures and perps product. And, you know, even in that sense, like the whole derivative sector, like as a bucket, I think has so much more to grow. One of the really cool stats was, I think options make up, what was it, 2%, I think, of overall kind of trading market share. Whereas if you look at traditional finance, I think it's like, options volume is like 35x that of spot, which is pretty nuts. So feels like we've got a couple of orders of magnitude left to go.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And just to hear about how you guys are looking to build the infrastructure and Rails for this, I'm curious just for an outline. I'm sure we glossed over it, but what are the current things that are live across Zeta? I know you guys have your options markets, Zeta Flex, but maybe just to outline them a little bit better.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of dive into that a little bit, we have two products now, Zeta Dex, which is our kind of order book based exchange. This is where you're going to find the best prices, the best kind of execution, I guess, because it is an order book. That's where like price discovery kind of happens. It's also under collateralized, so it means you don't have to put up all your money to actually trade it. It's like very capital efficient. And that is offering dated futures and options built on Serum. So that was our kind of first product that we came to market with, that launched in kind of early January and has been like growing pretty consistently. And then we launched a second product, I guess, catering to a lot of these kind of vault specific applications, which came out towards the end of January. So kind of shipping two mainnet products in a month was pretty nuts. But Zeta Dex, I guess, to differentiate that's more focused on, I guess, like OTC and kind of blocky trades. So rather than these kind of like very fast, you know, FTX or Deribit style trading on an order book, you're kind of trading this big block of like, you know, potentially millions of dollars of volume in one trade. And so that's more of a B2B product in a sense that we're catering to a lot of these other composable projects. So this is fully collateralized and it tends to be kind of an auction that goes down. You deposit in this vault, the vault will go manage those kind of funds, and then using our kind of infrastructure to mint any options and then also kind of like auction them off and settle them. It will use Zeta Flex under the hood to kind of facilitate that. And that's been taken off really well. I think we're in this market thesis right now, or like market cycle, where vaults are kind of the talk of the town. And we're seeing a lot of them. You know, obviously Ribbon kind of pioneered that on Ethereum. They've now got a few other projects that are kind of vying for that as well. And then on Solana, we saw a big boom, I would say, towards the end of last year. We have a bunch of ones like Katana and Friction and some of the others which have popped up. And just recently, actually, Katana migrated all their kind of TVL over to Zeta to kind of use our Rails as their kind of choice of dedicated infrastructure. So we've, as of our pretty much first week of launching, we were straight at 30 mil TVL, which I think is an awesome way to burst out of the gates.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see this demand, like you said, right out of the gates come out for the tooling you guys are building. I'm curious here. We have talked a lot about Zeta being Rails to a lot of these structured products, and even like you had your Zeta decks. I'm curious what the outlook is on onboarding a lot more users, retail users. It doesn't seem like that's like the biggest thing for Zeta, considering you guys are looking to build a ton of infrastructure really where it's nascent currently. But what is your outlook on how to onboard a lot more users onto these on ramps? I mean, on things like Robinhood, we are seeing a ton of people go after things like options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think really good question. That's probably like the biggest thing for us now is customer acquisition, growing the user base, growing volumes. Now that the actual core product is out. So there's probably like a few facets to that. Some of it is probably just down purely to marketing and getting the word out, because a lot of people still haven't heard about us. But that's, I think, pretty trivial and comes with time. There's kind of more of a BD aspect, which we're spending a lot of time on, and actually recently hired, I guess, a kind of head of BD for that, who's been doing an amazing job. And that's working with all these different projects for partnerships. We think that's probably the best way to kind of acquire a lot of users pretty quickly, rather than trying to like market, I think, options in terms of like trading on an order book exchange. Like, this is a pretty complicated thing and tends to really cater to institutional users. And so far, even though they are slowly moving, institutions are kind of working on this like multi-year timeline where I think it takes them quite a while to get sped up and migrate over. That's probably like the long-term future of, once the institutions are here and you have like the big players, they bring their kind of like huge amounts of volume to the platform. They're very sophisticated and can kind of trade with like high uptime and lots of volume. And so we do have 2 dedicated market makers who are kind of helping with that a lot and kind of bootstrapping the initial liquidity on our platform. But it's been kind of a multi-month journey of getting their trading systems up to scratch and having them kind of programmatically quoting. So they've been great, always ramping them up. But then I think the big focus right now is just attracting like the general DeFi crowd to us, as well as just trying to grow the pie, I guess, getting people potentially eventually coming like multi-chain, which is why we're working with like rebrand. I guess that's like a nice way to get some visibility across the wider ecosystem. Ethereum has like $110 billion TVL in DeFi, whereas Solana is still kind of close to, I think, on the lower side of maybe like 10 billion. So we have a lot to grow there. And so that's kind of how we're approaching that. So there are probably like 2 main ways. One is just like having a really good UX that will keep people kind of sticky. You come in there, you trade, you really enjoy it, and you kind of stay on and trade every day. So we've been focusing a lot on UX. And then the second bit is those partnerships. Like I mentioned, it's like we are like the infrastructure layer. We've built all this awesome stuff. And then I think having a bunch of really awesome, smart project builders on top of us, building cool products that kind of funnel into that, that kind of brings this kind of aggregated liquidity layer. Everyone trading derivatives through the same kind of set of rails is awesome. So having multiple vaults up there, people building like, I don't know, hedging protocols or a bunch of other kind of, nice things together. I think that's how you're kind of going to grow the pie there exponentially.
Definitely. I think it's really exciting and does some sort of have a chicken and egg problem. You do need those tight spreads, the liquidity, and then also the users. But it looks like things like these structured products are bringing a ton of TVL and volumes.
Yeah.
And then even just as Solana innovates, there's so much TVL in the ecosystem that can come over, let alone the pie growing itself. So I think that's really exciting just to hear about how you guys have already bootstrapped it from the ground. And now it's more so, okay, how do we scale this from here?
Yeah, we had this thing that we posted on Twitter. So there's like this liquidity whirlpool that we're trying to build up, and like, trying to have this like self-perpetuating cycle of, growing volumes and liquidity. And yeah, I think it kind of, you need to really kick it off and bootstrap it. So that's why I think these vaults are a very like kind of friendly product for people who are used to kind of liquidity providing into other protocols. It's like a one-click kind of solution to get exposure. You don't need to know how to like trade and manage individual options positions. And then that kind of goes in. And then the nice thing is like, once you have like a healthy amount of natural flow, that's probably when institutions and market makers really like to come in, because there's like more edge, more alpha for them. They don't want to come into like bit of a barren order book where it's just like Alameda trading against Jump. Like they don't really want to be trading against one another, which is kind of tough. But then, yeah, hopefully we kind of build this this pretty good ecosystem and kind of lots of different actors, I think, coming in there and kind of contributing.
Definitely. I think it's super cool just to see how you guys were able to jump on the need for something like an auction platform, Zeta Flex, and
Mhm.
really just get it out there to solve problems. And really just starting to tie things up. It's getting towards the end of my questions,
Mhm.
but I like to always just open it up at the end. What's something that you're excited for in the mid to long term for Zeta, but then also just the ecosystem as a whole? So another two-part question there.
Yeah, great question. I think for us, just generally, like, yeah, having more projects and more builders involved, I think there are a lot of novel financial products that like haven't even come to light yet. So stuff kind of like these everlasting options are really cool. They solve a real problem of not having to like roll options through expiries. So people, I think, coming up with new mathematical formulations, new kind of products that haven't existed in traditional finance yet. I think that's something I'm super excited to get to. And it's something that I remember in the early days when we started this hackathon. We were like, what should we build? We want to build options. We kind of talked to Bartosz, who's like one of the like lead engineers at Solana, and he was like, don't build vanilla options, because like people are already doing that. Go and build like these kind of funky exotic options or everlastings. But then the problem and reason why you can't do that is like you need the core infrastructure, you need the margining system, you need to be integrated with Serum for like the matching engine, you need like a good robust like liquidations kind of network, all these different things that I think enable like the next tier of financial products and financial innovation. So I think now that we've pretty much built all those out in kind of a pretty sophisticated manner, that's when people can kind of get really into the research side, get creative, start building things that we haven't seen before. And I think it's awesome to be able to kind of prop up those innovations. I think more generally, I think in terms of the Solana ecosystem, yeah, I think despite like market movements and like random FUD that always seems to come, here and there, I think it's still such like a fast growing ecosystem. I remember reading Electric Capital's developer report recently, and they basically outlined from all the open source repos like which I guess blockchains were the fastest growing in terms of developer contributors and projects coming up, and Solana was ahead of the game. They're growing incredibly fast. It's the fastest growing developer ecosystem in crypto, which is very cool to see. And we've met so many cool projects. So I think it's great on the dev side. Lots of new projects coming up. I think it's an exciting time to get into it. You've got great tooling and frameworks like Anchor coming up that makes development a breeze, and just attracting, I think, more and more users to the network is great. We saw this big NFT boom last year with Solana, which just, I think it was kind of nuts coming from the early days when like barely anyone was using Solana, and it was just like this hardcore DeFi users, with Serum and some other projects. And now you've got like a bunch of people just like aping into NFTs using Metaplex and like all these other cool platforms. And I think like the next stage of that is probably stuff like Solana Pay, working with kind of payment providers. That's probably a great way to onboard people. And Solana is just like so cheap, so fast. It just seems like a really nice network that can potentially onboard millions, if not like, the first billion users into crypto. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that was very well put, Tristan. And I think a big thing there is just the talent that has poured into the chain. And that seems to be one of these leading indicators of everything that's building and sets the stage for the future. Things like NFTs, but then this massive use case of DeFi that Solana has, and then things like Solana Pay popping up. Someone was able to spin something up here in 48 hours, Mountain Pay,
Yeah, that's right.
and we were buying snacks. So it's just been amazing to see all of this. And I think the hacker houses start to echo this, all of the talent pouring into the space. So that definitely gets me excited as well too. And really just closing things off, Tristan, I want to thank you guys for coming on. It's been amazing watching Zeta grow. Like you said, shipping 2 products to mainnet in the same month has been amazing. And I think everyone is just looking forward for more infrastructure and what you guys are going to do next. I remember seeing you, I think the Zeta intern account posted when you guys were in Chicago, and it was like chewing glass. And ever since then, it's just been like nonstop. And I imagine even the year before, it's been just intense. So super excited to see what's coming up. And just want to thank you for coming on, Tristan.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and appreciate the kind words. Only more to come.
Yeah, 100%. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And until next time, peace out.